Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another noodle film review. Tonight we're looking at classic folk horror film called Witchfinder General, starring Vincent Price. Now this was one of the unholy trilogy films that was sort of led to believe to be the start of the folk sort of horror films, which included this film and included Blood on Satan's Claw and include The Wicker Man, which was supposed to be like the sort of ones that started the whole sort of folk horror genre. Now, folk horror genre is a very it's a fantastic. It's one of my favourite genres, subgenres of horror. And to be a sort of folk horror, you have to follow certain sort of things to be classed as a folk horror. You have to be set in a rural sort of place, mostly in olden sort of times, and supposed to have your own sort of local folk in a village or something like that, that's set in their ways and beliefs, and you have outsiders coming in that don't fit in. It's that kind of thing, and they all have some sort of a lot of it has connections to paganism and sort of witchcraft, and this one is like the witchcraft story, this is one of the trilogy that is actually based on the true sort of story. It's based in the 1600s, I believe, in the sort of Civil War, Oliver Cromwell sort of Civil War time, and Vincent Price plays. I'm trying to think of the guy's name, the Witchfinder's name. You might tell me on the box, but it's based on his life. Matthew Hopkins, that's it. And he was a witchfinder in the 1600s. And he, because the country was at war, he was going around sort of like an anarchist, really, going around terrorizing small villages and small towns, going in and sort of torturing people, to get them to confess to witchcraft so they can be executed. And back in history, he ended up killing like hundreds of people. Him and his sort of the men that work with him. They used to get village people that used to think they had witches in their villages. It could be down to many things: bad crops, bad harvest, or anybody they didn't like. They sort of class as a witch, and they would send for Matthew Hopkins, and he would come and they would torture them, and they would sort of get a confession from them, and then they'd be sort of like executed. And this sort of film is based on his life story, and there is a sort of sub story in the film where it's about this soldier, who's one of the soldiers of the Civil War, and he's got a girlfriend in the village, and he gets a few days off, and he goes back to the village to see his girlfriend, and she lives with his uncle, who's a priest, and his uncle gives him wants him to have permission to marry her, and to do it soon, and to take her away from the village, because he knows that this witchfinder is on his way to the village, and they're actually going there to hunt him, the priest, because he's been reported of being some sort of witch and sort of worshipping Satanism and stuff like this. A priest. Anyway, so he agrees to marry her, and stuff like that, and he doesn't know that the witchfinder's on his way, and he goes back off to join his army. Off he goes, and when he's en route there at night time, he comes across a load of villagers standing on the outskirts of the village, and he goes, "Well, you know what are you all doing here at night?" They said, "Oh, we're just waiting for this lawyer to come. There's a lawyer coming to town." And okay, well, if I see him, I'll stop him. And he carries on his journey, and he stumbles across Vincent Price. Now, he approaches the soldier and says, "You know, am I close to the village, my friend?" And he goes, "Yeah, you're just 3 miles away." And you're the solicitor? He goes, "Yeah." Anyway, so he's on his way to the town, and the villagers catch up with Vincent Price, who plays Matthew Hopkins, and informs him of the priest. And then they go to the priest's house, The young girl, the soldier's girlfriend, she's gone out for a walk, and then they start terrorizing and torturing the priest, doing all these old traditional sort of myth kind of tortures, thinking that this will prove that he's um, a witch. Anyway, they sort of rip his back of his shirt off and start stabbing him in the back with this sort of like small blade thing. They're saying if he doesn't bleed, then he's a witch. But he's bleeding and stuff like this, and then they try and walking him round and round and round so he doesn't get tired, and they're trying all these different methods to torture him to get him to confess. And while this is going on, Vincent Price spots the girl, and she's on her way back to the house because she's been told what's going on. And when she gets back, she's stopped by Vincent Price, and Vincent Price says, are you related to him and stuff like that, because you also could be under the spell of witchcraft. And she says no. She sort of like says that she's the maid to him. She's his maid, and so he convinces her um, to interview her, but this is not really an interview. He wants to seduce her, and she agrees to this as long as they stop torturing the priest. So Vincent Price agrees to stop this and says, "We'll just put him in the jail for now." So they put the priest to jail, and Vincent Price starts making regular nightly visits to the girl, and she's doing him favours, I suppose, just to keep her uncle, who's the priest, alive. Anyway, so this is what's going on, and Vincent Price's sort of guy that works with him, John, his name is, he's starting to realise there's something going on. So he follows Vincent Price one night to the house and sees that he's getting his way with this girl, and this is why they're not killing the priest or torturing the priest or getting the confession. Anyway, he becomes a bit jealous, I think. And Vincent Price has to go to the next little village one day just to speak to someone. And John, who's his assistant, then finds the girl, and sort of, because he's left her behind, he finds the girl, and then he rapes her by the looks of it in the field. You don't see this, but he rapes her. And the Vincent Price come back, he's told about what's happened, and then he wants them to continue to get the confession from the priest. So all sort of things going on, and the poor soldier knows nothing about this. So are they going to kill this priest? Are they going to then go after the girl and think that she is a witch? Is the guy going to come back and save him, or are they going to be killed, and is he going to get revenge on them? You need to watch it and find out. What do I think of Witchfinder General? It's a classic. It's a classic British folk horror. Very, very along the lines of a Hammer film, but a little bit more gory and a little bit more brutal. It's a very brutal film because there's lots of scenes of torture. That's why I can't show you too many clips. It's very much like that Italian film Mark of the Devil, or I think that's Spanish actually, which is a similar sort of film. And it's very brutal. It contains burnings, hangings, and all this sort of thing. It's based on true stories of the 1600s in England, and it must have been a horrible, terrifying place to live. As well as a sort of innocent place to live at the same time, as long as you didn't see any of this sort of stuff going on. But yeah, it's a great story. It's really, really cool. I absolutely love the film. The pluses of this version, it's just a normal Blu-ray release. I don't think it's by any sort of Pacific sort of a major company. But it's a great film, and it's a really good transfer. It's got some natural grain in it. It's really well acted. Vincent Price is one of his best roles, I think, he's very convincing as Matthew Hopkins. He plays the evil guy very well, doesn't he? It's quite brutal, and there is some gore in the film, and there is some scenes of torture, which some people might find hard to watch, especially when they're torturing and punching and slapping women and stuff like that. It can be quite difficult to watch, uncomfortable, but it's not as graphic as films are today, obviously, because this is an old film in the 60s. The negatives, I wish it was a bit longer and more followed him on different stories, rather than concentrating quite a big time on this story, because he was renowned for doing this all over the country, and I would like to have seen more of a documentary sort of way it was filmed, rather than, you know, this storyline. But it's still a cracking, amazing film. I'm going to score this an awesome watch and give it a 9 out of 10. It's absolutely fantastic. It's not my favourite of the folk horror, the Unholy trilogy. It's probably my third, actually, favourite of that. I will be doing a folk horror top 10 later in the month, so keep your eyes out for that if you're interested. 9 out of 10, Witchfinder General. Any of you guys seen it? If you have, let me know down below what you think of it. Yes, Vincent Price is a fantastic American actor, but I think when he came over to Britain and did a few films, that's when he shone most, with Theatre of Blood and Witchfinder General and these sort of films. Absolutely amazing. Not to knock his films that he did in America, you know, his Edgar Allan Poe films, they were fantastic too. But I think he's more, when he's in a grittier film like this, I think he really shines. And it's absolutely fantastic. A really great film. Anyway, guys, till my next video, check out some horror channels for me. Check out Horror Hands, Horror Geek, Man v Film, RS Designs, Pizzawell. I'm the Ice Lord, Cat watches horror movies. Grumpy Andrew's Haunted House, and a massive shout out to my lad. Until next time, look after yourselves, look after one another, and I really hope I'll see you all soon.